percent of the people in poverty go through a variety of trials to find themselves among the 3% of the wealthy. Today we will recap the 2016 series 3%. In the dystopian not too distant future, the world is divided into two separate regions. The first region is called offshore, where people live in luxury and affluence, enjoying delicious food, expensive things and beautiful apartments. The second region is the impoverished, who survive in the inner part of the mainland. They do not have access to healthcare, employment, education, or the right to a good life. At the age of 20, a person is given his only opportunity to change his life and get into the offshore. The classification into rich and poor is made through a selection process, of which the candidates are informed in advance. According to strict rules, the number of the chosen must never exceed 3% of the total number of willing applicants. Those who enter the perfect world are never allowed to return. Year 104 of the process, Subequatorial Amazonia. Chapter 1, The Cubes. Michelle reaches her 20th birthday and receives a message inviting her to participate in the process. She leaves home with other young people like her, including her best friend, Bruno. The mothers say goodbye to their children and give their final farewells. The town madwoman laughs at their dreams. Previously, she, too, had naively believed that she would pass the selection process. The young men climb up the long passageways that separate the poverty-stricken mainland from the modern high-rise building. Inside, the first thing they are given are new clean clothes. After that, project leader Ezekiel explains that only 3% of them will be able to go to the coast, where the founders created the perfect world. They all have the same chance of securing their place on the coast or the mainland. The process helps to identify the most deserving. Unfortunately, there are often dissatisfied participants, which results in rebellions. The man addresses everyone by name, which flatters the youth and gives hope for a favorable change of fortune. And then everyone gives thanks for the opportunity to have a better life. The first test is the interview. Fernando, who is in a wheelchair, refuses help. He wants everyone to see at once that he is self-sufficient. This year there is a new addition to the process. A representative of the offshore Aline will be watching everything, which Ezekiel does not particularly like. To his objection, Councilman Nair reminds him that a participant from the last process killed a man on the offshore for the first time in 100 years. After this unprecedented event, there are those who want to replace Ezekiel on the council. The interview begins. The questions are very different, sometimes of a personal nature. Some want to help the community, some want to be cured, and some just want to improve their lives. And there are those like Marco, whose relatives have always passed the process, so he feels confident. Some are dismissed immediately because their motivation for applying is simply too trivial for life in the coastal area. This causes some hysterics and objections. The interviewer tries to trick Michelle and asks her out on a date after the test. The girl doesn't respond, and that is when he notices a pendant around her neck. She tells him about her friend Luis, who didn't return home the year before. But the interviewer disappoints the young woman, because during the process an accident may occur. The process employee is not sure of Michelle's sincere intention to go to the offshore. She tears off Luis's pendant, and reveals that she doesn't actually want to go through the trials at all because of her friend. She makes it to the next stage, but in the end the interviewer sneeringly informs her that her friend Luis is long dead. The next interview is with Joanna, who is not much of a talker. The interviewer attempts to pressure her emotionally and tells her that the other contestants were begging him to let them through to the next stage. But the girl is smarter than those other people, and thanks to her cool composure, she passes through. Fernando talks about his father, who is a priest and is always supportive of him despite his disability. The interviewer decides that the boy only wishes to go to the perfect world because he has been indoctrinated with this desire since he was a child. Eventually he confesses that he doesn't want to live the same life as his father, and he is approved. Ezekiel receives a report that one of the members of the opposition organization AIM has been apprehended. It becomes clear that a spy has been planted in the process. They have to eliminate the mole as soon as possible, but first they have to identify him among the participants. In the meantime, members of the AIM organization gather in a secret hideout. They believe that everyone has the right to a good life, and that the process is a heartless propaganda machine that has no right to determine how people should live. The organization's leader is sure that the captured activist, George, will not surrender the name of the spy at the process. He is subjected to brutal torture, but the guy continues to maintain silence. One of the disqualified participants in the process throws himself off the balcony of the building right in front of a group of selected candidates. People are overwhelmed by what they see, but they must move on. Everyone in the modern world has a registration, a chip implanted in the back of their ear. Thanks to it, all data about an individual may be learned. All participants are required to undergo a process verification to authenticate their enrollment. Joanna notices that one of the other candidates, Raphael, has had his registration falsified. Regardless, the scanner allows the guy to go through. The second test is that everyone must assemble 9 cubes from sets of complicated blocks. Only 5 minutes are given for the challenge. Anyone who doesn't manage to do it in time is disqualified. When Fernando is unable to reach the cubes in the middle of the table, Michelle helps him in spite of the limited time. Raphael manages to cheat again and steals 1 die from another candidate. However, Ezekiel is amused with this and lets him move on. In the final seconds of the challenge, Michelle only has 8 cubes left. Fernando arranges her cubes into one big one, thus forming the 9th cube. His ingenuity helps the girl advance to the next stage. Joanna manages to make as many as 11 cubes, much to Ezekiel's approval. After the test, they all go to the dining hall where they eagerly feast on the delicacies that they have never tasted before. Raphael is looked at with disapproval and disgust behind his back, to which he accuses the others of being hypocrites. After all, not one of the participants stepped up for him. He did what every one of them would do in order to win. He provokes one of the other guys and a fight ensues, with several other contestants joining in. The fight is brought to a halt by Alvarez. Joanna realizes that Raphael's provocation has led half of those present now to consider him a victim. She suggests that they become friends and stick together. Aline tries to get Ezekiel to talk and get information out of him. She expresses sympathy to him about the incident with his wife. The man becomes furious and says he has no intention of discussing his private life. At this time, the employee who was assessing the guy who jumped off the balcony comes in. The man worries about her, because such candidates are pathetic weak people, and she is a valuable person. He suddenly dips her head into the water and holds her down until the woman begins to suffocate. With this, he reminds her of the proximity of death and only they can decide who gets to live and how. The instructor thanks him for teaching her, much to Aline's amazement. Later, Michelle and Bruno have their eyes taped shut and are taken to a back room, as the offshore suspects that one of them is an infiltrated agent of the revolutionary group AIM. They have received intelligence that the mole resides in the same building as the friends. Unless the girls betray the spy, they will both be killed. They are frightened, but neither of them wants to admit that they are connected to the underground. Michelle asks Bruno to confess and save her life, but her friend is adamant and assures her that she is not a member of AIM. When the interrogator gives them time to think, Michelle convinces Bruno to attack her together, because it is the only way to survive. She herself recalls her older comrade's admonition about how to answer interview questions correctly. It was he who taught her the tricks to fool the examiners and made up the story about Luis to hook the interviewer. It becomes clear that it was Ezekiel who had once killed Michelle's brother, who had replaced the girl's parents, and it was for the sake of revenge that she joined AIM and came to the process. Bruno attacks the interrogator and is killed, while Michelle is left standing still. Ezekiel bursts into the room and apologizes to the girl for witnessing the unpleasant incident. The process's security service is convinced that Bruno was the undercover agent, when in fact it was Michelle. They convince the girl not to tell anyone what happened. Leaving the secret room, she weeps over the fact that she caused her friend's death. Chapter 2, Tokens. Fernando recalls his childhood dreams of the coastline. From an early age he was preparing for interviews and coming up with answers to tricky questions. The boy understood that life in poverty is already a game of survival, and when you're in a wheelchair, every day could be your last. In the present, Fernando hears the announcement that candidates must be physically fit to continue in the process. Aline reports on the incriminating evidence she has collected on Ezekiel, but her superiors do not consider it important. The candidates discuss Bruno's disappearance. The young men are convinced that AIM is a gang of criminals and hindering their success. During a physical examination, the doctor gives Fernando an injection. Thanks to it, he can feel his legs again for a few seconds. The doctor informs him that modern coastal medicine can cure his ailment, but to do so he must first pass the process. He shares this information with Michelle, but he cannot understand his feelings. He has already gotten used to his illness and learned to accept it, and now he has a chance to change everything. This adds to his motivation to complete the process. The third challenge begins, a staged crime scene set up in a coastal apartment. The group must analyze the location and figure out what happened here. The participants examine every detail in the room, trying to find a clue. Michelle finds an obscure chemical formula. Joanna does not take part in the search and immediately lies down on the couch. This crime scene unfolds at the dinner table. At first it appears that the woman mannequin simply choked, but Fernando believes she was poisoned by the housewife and makes a convincing argument for her version. He notices that one of the couple has dirt on their shoes. This means that they have come to visit. In critical situations, people reach for someone who is close to them, and the victim had her eyes on her landlord rather than her husband. They may have been lovers, as the wife found out and poisoned the guest's food. Her indifferent gaze during her rival's final agony only confirms the boy's theory. Raphael laughs at his version, as the creators of the challenge would never show murder in the perfect coastal world. He points out that the evidence is deceptive and in fact the woman is allergic to silver. She is reaching for the lady's husband, since he is a doctor. This is confirmed by the formula found in the drawings of the human body composition. There is no silver jewelry on everyone present, but the guest did not pay attention to the silverware and received anaphylactic shock. A final mystery remains, why the housewife looks on with an impassive look at what is going on. The answer is given by Joanna, who guessed everything in the first minutes of the ordeal. The housewife is blind, as evidenced by a braille book found in her nightstand. The team approves of Raphael's version and he tells it to the reviewers. A staff member tries to trick the team and asks if anyone present has a different version. However, Fernando agrees with Raphael's version and the group passes the test. Aline, on camera, sees Ezekiel leave the building in rags and move through the slums in an unknown direction. The candidates proceed to the next test. There are 6 tokens in front of them and the group must decide who is redundant, otherwise everyone is eliminated. The remaining participants will have to complete the next challenge together. Raphael simply takes the token, but Marco takes it away by force and returns it to the bag with the rest of the coins. Michelle votes against Raphael, since the guy has cheated and double-crossed the other contestants before. The guy counters by saying that his cheating helped them pass the last test, while Fernando's version nearly sent them back into poverty. He votes against the boy in the wheelchair, as he will be a burden to everyone in the group challenge. Fernando votes against Joanna, who is indifferent to all the trials of the process and doesn't even try to prove herself. The boy again recalls his father's sermons about how coastal life is fair and just, but you have to believe in success. He tells the participants about the hope of walking again after visiting the doctor, eliciting their sympathy. Aline continues to follow Ezekiel, but he skillfully hides from the cameras. In one alleyway, he accidentally drops some fruit and a small part of his face gets caught in the lens. Back in his office, he makes sure that the scanners didn't recognize his face and cleans up the camera footage. Ezekiel meets Aline as if nothing had happened, and she reports to the management that once a week the man goes to a certain place on the mainland. Except none of the footage shows his face and she is ordered to find out the man's secret. Michelle suggests drawing lots to decide who leaves the team. Agatha gives up her scarf and Marco rips it apart. The shortest piece of fabric goes to Joanna, but the girl surprises everyone again and moves on with the last token in her hands. Analyzing the notes, Ezekiel notices how at the beginning of the challenge Joanna takes the token from the bag instead of leaving it there like all the other contestants. Her slyness pleases the project leader and he asks an assistant to find more information about the contestant. Fernando admits to Michelle his weakness to the other candidates, but she disagrees. She tries to convince him that the process is doing all this to him, but the boy believes that it is, on the contrary, giving him a chance at a better life. Chapter 3, The Corridor. Nair tells Ezekiel about Aline's surveillance. The next test begins. The group must pass through a tunnel together. Suddenly, a gas that causes hallucinations is released. People have to overcome their fears. Everyone sees something different. Michelle is confronted by Ezekiel, who calls her an agent of the AIM. Marco wonders if he is worse than his successful family and if he will never make it to the coast. Fernando imagines that he is back on his feet. Raphael thinks his registration scam has been exposed and everyone calls him a fraud. Joanna hears accusations of murder, but manages to be the first to reach the tunnel exit. However, she is told that the only way out is for everyone to get out together. She is forced to return for the others, despite her increasing hallucinations. Through persuasion and commands, she manages to get everyone out. After returning to the hostel, Fernando thanks Joanna. Without her help, they would have been with the others. Even though the effects of the drug should have worn off, Agatha continues to hallucinate. Fernando asks Michelle about the brother she was talking about in her delirium in the tunnel. To distract the boy from his dangerous questioning, the girl kisses him. The others, meanwhile, discuss the coast and life there. No one knows exactly what it looks like or where it is, but they are sure that there is a paradise waiting for them there. They are also amazed that Joanna was not afraid of anything in the tunnel. The girl recalls sneaking into the dwelling of local bandit and stealing from them in order to get by somehow. Once, by mistake, she killed a child, the son of a local gangster. At this time, a distraught Agatha pounces on her and tries to strangle her. Raphael sees this and hesitates for a while whether to help her. She is the only one who knows about his registration and might betray him. But then, nevertheless, intervenes and saves her friend. Meanwhile, Ezekiel secretly meets a boy named Augusto, who comes from the inner world. He apologizes that he won't be able to see him as often as he used to. He feeds the boy and gives him glasses for his eyesight. Joanna returns to her memories. She visits a woman who makes fake registrations. After killing a gangster's son, she is forced to steal someone else's identity and go through the process thanks to her in order to escape retribution. She confesses to Raphael that she saw a child in the tunnel and then here in the hallway. The guy tries to reassure her. After all, she did save them. He suggests she become true partners. Raphael is confident that Joanna will not turn him in, as he can turn her in as well. Aline knocks on Ezekiel's room and he hides Augusto. The man says he knows who sent the girl and why. She warns Ezekiel that information about anyone can be found in the public system and he won't be able to hide his secret for long. Lastly, the young woman asks if it is permitted to leave the building during the process. When Aline leaves, Ezekiel takes Augusto out and forbids him to come here. Afterwards he dips his head in water to recover his senses.